Okay, so this week
Oh,
we
now
are.
William's coming here.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
That we're studying chapter 12. Keep the name I sacred. And we'll just wait for William to tune in and start the meditation.
Yes. No.
Ah, there you are. Welcome. We are just
Sorry,
getting
I'm late.
started. That's just fine. Nice to see you.
Yeah, you
So
too.
we're just about to start the meditation. You ready to drop in? Okay. Okay, so let's all arrive into this moment. Just as best you can, allowing the mind to become still. Allowing the body to become still as well. And turn your attention to that sense of being myself, being yourself that has always been present. Bring your attention to that sense of I. And continue to allow all else to be still. So, in other words, don't mix this sense of being myself with anything else. No image, no idea, no prior experience. And then notice what it's like. What is your presence like when all else has fallen away and the attention is solely with I? That sense. And allow yourself to establish almost like a guidepost marker of what this is like. And a reminder that this presence is always here and the qualities of beingness are always here. And I invite you to allow yourself to become really interested in what it's like being here. almost like turn on the gravity of your innate, inbuilt desire. And that can draw us back. It's like turning on the gravity well of this beingness. Draws us effortlessly back here simply because we're interested. So again, I invite you to allow yourself to become deeply interested in this I. And now staying present with that I, gently re-engage the body, deepening the breath. Maybe wiggling the fingers. And see if you can stay connected to that I, with that I, even as the eyes open. And notice what it's like to be this I, even as we see the world and feel the body. And if there's any shares, we can go there. And if not, we can begin with chapter 12. All right, let's read. Anybody want to start us?
I can start us.
You're always willing, Caroline.
I know. And I was the same way in school. I'll
That's
read
great.
because nobody else would volunteer. I always felt this people pleasing energy of let me help the teacher. And then I became a teacher and I understood like that person that always raises their hand to read.
That's
Okay,
great.
to
I
the
feel like
first.
giving you a gold star. Wait,
Oh.
oh, there you go. I give you sparkles.
Oh, thank you. That is very cute. I haven't seen that reaction button. You want me to read up to the first bar?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Chapter 12, keep the name I sacred. I is the name that whatever knows or is aware of itself gives to itself. A rock does not know itself. A flower does not know itself, nor does a tree, a cat, a dog, or a person. Only awareness is aware. Therefore, only awareness knows or is aware of itself. The name I is not the name that a person, excuse me, gives to their self. It is the name that awareness gives to itself and should be reserved for awareness alone. In awareness's knowledge of itself, there are no limits. Its knowledge of itself is infinite. The name I should always refer to this infinite self-aware being. It is the name of God. God's presence shines in each of us as the ordinary, intimate, and familiar experience of being myself or I am. Our knowledge of ourself is awareness's knowledge of itself, which is God's knowledge of himself.
Okay, let's discuss. One thing
Well,
that
I'm
stood
struck.
out to me.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, you go
Sorry.
first.
Well, the very bottom of 105, God's presence shines in each of us as the ordinary, intimate, and familiar experience. I don't see how this is ordinary at all. To me,
Mm,
I think of this as just this beautiful, mystical experience that, yes, is familiar, because
yeah,
going back to the I am is like remembering who I've always been, but forgot in this incarnation.
yeah.
But I was struck with the word ordinary because this entire path, this hero's journey, is anything but ordinary.
Mm,
So few of us take this road. So very few of us are willing to take the mantle and do God's work. I mean, this is truly not ordinary, but that was his use of a word. And I know I don't need to be hung up on that particular word, but maybe your take on ordinary is different than mine.
mm. Looks like you might want to respond, William. Am I right about that?
I was just agreeing with the last thing Carolyn said, that our definitions of ordinary might differ.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Do you want to say more?
Not just yet.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I can find resonance with what you're saying. I think it's not ordinary necessarily to take this path. And what I think he's pointing to is not the path of focusing and seeing ourselves as awareness, but that the awareness that we are is ordinary. Every being is awareness, right? Like every person, like we think of people as having awareness, right? But that's one of the points that he makes that actually stands out to me. Like a person doesn't have awareness, like a person being the body, because a body doesn't have awareness. Awareness has a body, can have a body. And I think the choice of the word ordinary is very intentional, because we think of it as not ordinary. We think of it as non-ordinary, as very special, but it actually is so simple and ordinary, and I think it's actually that experience of the ordinariness is often kind of what's experienced in my understanding of like the cosmic joke, like there can be an experience of an awakening, and then like what shows up is like laughter. And I think a lot of the experience of laughter that shows up in awakening is realizing it's so ordinary. It was here the whole time. Like it's just me. That's all there is to it. That's all that self-realization is just realizing the self. It's so ordinary. So I think that's what he means. I think it's an intentional use of the word, pointing to that realization.
So which definition of ordinary would be used, do you think, that is most aligned with him? Because there's quite a few.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I would need to look at a dictionary, but I think what he means is like it's ever present, it's every day, it's common. It's not extraordinary by any means. It is what everything is made of. It's the very fabric of all of it.
Yeah, I tend to agree.
Yeah.
I mean, I was thinking about some pointer I heard this week from Ram Dass, one of my old comfortable warm blankets, that we can be both simultaneously happy and sad at the same time, that I can hold that within me. I can hold that this is an ordinary and yet extraordinary experience at the same time. That it's that balance of simple and, as Muji calls it, effortless, You would always think of this I am presence as effortless, because the paradox here is it doesn't take effort to return to this state of divine presence.
Yeah.
But I like the idea from Ram Dass that I can simultaneously hold polar opposite emotions or understandings or whatnot. At the same time, I can hold these in my heart and know. I used to think I could only be one or the other. And then I started really going deep into this, and I realized I can be both happy and sad at the same time. I can realize this is an ordinary experience or knowing, but yet at the same time, it's so overwhelmingly beautiful and extraordinary. I feel so blessed to have this understanding at all.
Yeah.
Because 99% of the world out there doesn't know what we're talking about.
Yeah.
No. Yeah. I get so choked up. I mean, just when I really think about the fact that I had the opportunity to make a plan before this birth and to choose this lifetime to wake up at such a beautiful moment in the world's evolution, in Gaia's evolution. So ordinary and extraordinary, I guess I would say, or I can hold both of those in my heart.
Yeah. Yeah. One thing that's really fascinating to me about this too, I mean, I mentioned it a little bit already, but like just at the very top where he says, a rock doesn't know itself, nor does this or that, nor this, nor that, nor a person. That's so fascinating, right? Like just like a person doesn't know themselves. Awareness knows itself. Like, wow, the differentiation for me, like, it seems like it's like, oh, that's just semantics, but like, no, it matters. Like a person doesn't know itself. That's awareness. And like the distinction between a person doesn't have awareness. Awareness may have a body. And that distinction is just like, it's such a simple flip, but it's profound. Like it changes everything. Yeah. And oh my gosh, the name I should always refer to this infinite self-aware being. It is the name of God. That's huge. That's like, wait, I is the name of God, right? Like, I is this ordinary word, right? That we use all the time. It's probably one of the words we use the most.
I am is used a lot.
Yeah.
He makes a distinction that's kind of sacrilegious, and so I don't know what other word for it, but I get to that I equals awareness, that I is only awareness.
Yeah.
I am is awareness. Well, Moses asked God in the burning bush, what do I call you? And God said, I am that I am.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, William, do you feel like reading the next section?
Oh. Be aware of the experience of being myself. Before we know anything else, we know that we are. We know our own being. We know that I am. The knowledge I am, the awareness of being, is the mind's primary knowledge. This knowledge is the same for everyone. The awareness of being in Hitler was identical to the awareness of being in Ramana Maharshi or the Buddha. Their thoughts, feelings, activities, and relationships were different, but their essential self was the same. In one case, it was obscured by experience, and in the others, it was not. Nor is the recognition of our own being extraordinary or difficult. Everybody has the sense of being myself or the experience I am. If we were to ask any of the 7 billion people on Earth, are you present or are you aware? As long as they understood the question, they would answer, yes, I am. Everyone knows their own being. That is, the being in everyone knows itself. The expression I am, before anything has been attached to it, is the simplest expression of self-knowledge. In order to say I am, I must know that I am. Ramana Maharshi once said that God's statement to Moses, I am that I am, is the highest formulation of truth in any spiritual tradition. That is why the name I in this approach is considered to be sacred. It is the holy name, the name of God. All that is necessary is to sound the name I or I am once in our mind and allow ourselves to be drawn into its referent. It is for this reason that the Zen master Ikkyu said, of all the koans, I is the highest.
So let's discuss that one. Something that I have learned through Rupert's teachings is how, so the mind has concepts. So I sometimes like to think, okay, I'm like backing up before I get to Rupert's thing, providing some context. I like to think of the mind as sort of like a mirror of the world sometimes. So like, I'll have a concept about, myself, for instance, and there may be like, okay, there's a true, body, for instance, let's say BJ, this is BJ, but then the mind has a concept of me that may look just like me. It's like my reflection in the mirror, but that concept of me isn't the same as me. Right? So the mind is really good at creating concepts that are mirror image, that can be, they're not always, but they can be a mirror image of the world, but it's not the same thing as the thing in the world, right? Like the concept tree is not a tree. There's a tree, and then I can think about a tree. It's not the same. So, but there is the concept of I, and this is what so to take it back to Rupert, this is the principle that I've learned from Rupert. The concept of I is the only concept in the mind that points you back to its referent. Like when I think of the concept tree, it takes me into the concept, the mind concept of tree. It doesn't actually draw me towards the truth of tree. Versus the concept of I is what takes me to the experience of the thing itself, which is so fascinating. So like, I think that's a lot of what he's pointing to of why I is sacred, because it's a concept that points to direct experience as opposed to any other concept. No other concept points to the thing itself.
Oh, that was deep.
Yeah, right? I know. Like, whoa, thanks,
I'm trying to
Rupert.
catch my breath. Yeah.
I'm not sure that I, as the referent to I am, is a concept.
Hmm. Well, I think there is a
You just made it a
concept.
thing.
There is a concept, I, and it can bring us to the experience of I, right? The sense of being myself. You know, I think they are two different things. There is a concept I that isn't the sense of being myself, but the concept I does point to the thing itself, as opposed to other concepts don't point to the thing, they point to the concept. If that makes sense.
Yeah, that does.
So when you either one of you lean into and you feel this I am presence, the state of I am presence, you feel that you how do you, I guess, do you feel like you're in the highest state of your beingness, your consciousness? Is this the holy grail of our crystalline staircase to oneness, as I call it? To know I am the creator, that I am everything, the world is me, and I am the world. Does it bring that whole understanding of oneness into, I don't know, I look at it as a, this is very trivial, but like the big beautiful bow on this gift of consciousness. It is the, how do you feel when you feel the I am presence? What do you, can you even describe anything like what it means for you?
Why don't you go first, William? Because I've been talking a lot.
Difficult to do without dressing it up. It feels pretty ordinary.
Yeah.
Oh,
For me, like, so before you came on, William, Caroline and I were talking about the work of Byron Katie a little bit, or actually I was talking about it because it's one of my, it's my jam, I like to say. But part of that practice is putting on a thought and then taking it off, and putting it on and taking it off, because I think there's often, like, the I does appear transparent and ordinary and we can't quite find it, but we can find it in more easily in contrast. Like, for instance, if I put on a thought and then take it off, out, like with the thought, it's usually we try on a stressful thought. With the thought, I'll feel constricted and contracted, and I'll be like angry or irritated and want to, and then without the thought, I can be like, oh, I was so present, I'm so chill, my heart is open, it does feel super ordinary. But then by contrast, practicing that contrast, we can discover more clearly the difference between mind and self, and what that self is, that's often more transparent. And what I find is like that being myself is expansive, it's present, as opposed to, like, often we're like out in the world in our minds, like in past or future, or in, like, scheming, planning, not seeing through our physical eyes. Normally we're not here. I'm like processing all the things I'm thinking about, like thinking about my mother, or thinking about, what, like thinking about all the things. So I experience present, expansive, effortlessly kind, generous, compassionate, And I also find that coming back to myself is like the gateway to my highest expression. It's not always what's immediately available when I come back to the I, but it does, the more that I come back to it, it does point me more and more to the, the extraordinary, the apparently extraordinary, the full expression. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Do you have an answer to your own question?
Well, I think back when this experience, this path first opened up, I leaned into Ramana Maharshi. Like, I don't know how on earth, I can't explain how this happened, but I found this great resonance in this meditation of deep self-inquiry on who am I? And it's like Mooji would say, can this go anywhere? Can it leave you and come back? It has all these questions, and the answer is always like, no, no, it's always here. But I think when I really, really feel into the I am presence, I feel super powerful. And that was the first thing that I remember stating to a group right after I woke up. I said, I want to rise into my own power. I've been disempowered my whole life. And that was like, it just fell out of me. And then I started listening to Ramana Maharshi. And I feel powerful when I feel in a state of I am presence.
Yeah.
I feel self-empowered. I feel like I'm standing in total truth. Truth is self-evident, needs no explanation. It's just what is. But I feel worthy. And I feel loved. And I feel this beautiful sense of just no longer being this disempowered empath that I spent my life being.
Yeah.
And so to me, it's just a gift of worthiness. And that's how I feel when I feel into the I am presence. It's just, I'm at the, as Mooji says, I'm in the height of my being, effortless, and yet you are at the height of your being.
Yeah.
I know who I am at a soul level. I understand why I'm here, what I came for, who I serve, why I serve, what I do. And that's my version of the I am presence. And it's just, it's beautiful. It's like absolute peace washes over me. True peace. It's powerful, man. It's really powerful to know who you are at a soul level. For me, anyway, that is the highest expression. To know why I came and who I am. Yeah. I have pondered this and spoken to a couple of wise individuals. I likely would say I've spent thousands of lifetimes disempowered. And this is why it feels so strong and so good. And so just, I don't know, the whole sense of being worthy and keeping myself centered in this peaceful place of I am.
Yeah.
It reminds me also of being able to hold neutrality. When I'm in the state of I am, that I'm not going to attach myself to all these things that are going on around me. I can just stay the unchanging one.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think being in this I am presence is sort of like the middle of the flower, and all the petals that go around the flower, the center, are what manifests from this I am presence, what the fruits of this beautiful expression.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's quite lovely.
Thank you. Ooh. It brings me to tears all the time.
Yeah.
It's that sorrow, joy, all at the same time. Like, so much compassion for the world that will not ever in this lifetime, they're on their own path, yes. But when you feel, when peace becomes your fragrance, then you want everyone else to know it too.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
yeah, that day will be here one day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm going to keep us going.
Hmm.
Thanks for sharing your heart.
Yeah. I appreciate
Okay.
you listening.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, it's a pleasure. Okay, I'm going to read the next section. This is a longer one. Yeah. Okay. All experience is a temporary coloring of unconditioned, unlimited, self-aware being. Experience is the activity of being. Being is experience at rest. Every experience is eternal, infinite being. God's being, clothing itself in its own activity, appearing to itself through the lens of perception as the world. Divested of its clothing, of its limitations, it is revealed as joy. This is what William Blake was describing when he said every bird that cuts the airy way is an immense world of delight enclosed by the five senses. Do not allow experience to persuade you that you are anything other than ever present, inherently peaceful, unconditionally fulfilled being, the being you share with everything and everyone. Allow yourself to be colored by experience temporarily, but do not become limited by it. To say and identify with the statements, I am sad, I am lonely, I am tired, I am hungry, I am a man, or I am a woman, is to allow infinite being to become limited and personal. When I am becomes I am this or that, it seems to cease being infinite and become finite. The separate self or ego is an apparent and ultimately illusory limitation self-assumed by infinite being. The finite cannot exist alongside the infinite. For if the finite displaced a part of the infinite would no longer be infinite. There is no room in the infinite for the finite. Thus, to believe I am a man, a woman, or a person is to impose a limit on God's infinite being. It is to deny the existence of God's infinite being, and that is blasphemy. It is not blasphemous to say, I am God, although it is not appropriate to do so. What is blasphemous is to believe and feel, I am a being apart from God's being. I am a self unto myself, a temporary finite self, separate from all others and from God. That is the original sin, the root cause of all other so-called sins. It is the departure from the Garden of Eden. In the Vedantic tradition, it is called ignorance, meaning not stupidity, but rather the ignoring of the true and only self, ever-present, unlimited awareness, and God's infinite self-aware being. To say and believe I am sick or I lack something is to identify oneself as finite. Only something that is finite can lack something or be in a state of disease. That which truly is the I of each of us knows no lack or disease. Whenever we feel sad, lonely, anxious, or depressed, we should pause and notice that the feeling is not essential to the knowledge I am. Return to the I am. Keep the I sacred. Do not allow yourself to be tarnished by association with anything other than yourself. Do not give yourself away to experience. So what stands out to you from that section? What do you want to discuss?
Well, I was struck with the statement that Rupert makes. It's not blasphemous to say I am God.
Hmm.
To the world, that is probably one of the most blasphemous things you could ever say out loud.
Yeah.
Either that or they think you're crazy. So yeah, that's why I'm sure he states it's not appropriate to do so. But living in consciousness, you know that you are God. And I always say that everything in the matrix is reversed. So I was born into a system where God was to be feared and God was separate. And don't you dare ever say that you are anything close to God. But you're born afraid, you're born a sinner, and you spend your whole life trying to ask for forgiveness. So to come out, when I left the church, I told my pastor that I am God. And he was very cool about it all. I wrote a letter as to why I've left religion. And it took me a while because I was actually kind of afraid to say that. But it's that sense of I am presence that brings that power to know it's truth. Nothing else. Truth with a big T.
Yeah.
And it's something I'd love to say out loud to more people, but it's not something you do out there in public.
Yeah.
Didn't work out well for Jesus.
No, but
Yeah.
No, I'm just saying that it's a shame. I think he's saying it's blasphemous to say I'm God because it's blasphemous to think you are, as opposed to know, truly know.
yeah, that's a good point.
Provided it is a true and untarnished knowing, separate from a conception of self and an identity. But you wouldn't go around saying it necessarily. I think if you were to do that, you'd have to presume that everyone understood what you were saying.
Yeah. Which
Or
wouldn't
knew what you were
necessarily
saying,
be.
not understood.
Yeah. Right. It's not necessarily common knowledge or yeah, people won't know where you're coming from if that's said.
Right.
No, they'll see you as somebody who thinks they're God, and it would be correct to see that as blasphemous.
Yeah.
To see somebody that thought they were God.
Yeah.
But I come from a different area with the whole religion thing, so I don't have the experience of being brought up with religion like you have, Carolyn. So forgive me if I seem to come across insensitive to any aspect of your experience. I mean, I think I get it, but it doesn't mean that I won't accidentally say something that kind of is a little bit blunt or insensitive. Quite the balancing act, all this. I mean, it seems to be the task then to kind of always be aware of what you mean by the word I when you use it. And not in like some painfully intellectual way, quite the opposite. But it seems to me that there is a place from which one can speak as an I. And that would be something along the lines of as a referent point of the infinite, say. But even that's naming a thing.
Yeah. I think in my own journey, what's been helpful is like to really use my emotional guidance system to point me to when I'm kind of on track or off track, because I think the experience of believing I to be limited, we feel it. And yeah, so to me, like making it sort of a language exercise is more of a mental, that's not where I'm drawn. I'm more interested in the experience, the direct experience, the like the feeling, sensation, awareness of what it's like, so for me that's been a tool a tool that I've returned to a lot, is like just noticing what my presence is showing me in terms of is my experience limited right now, or is it more tending more towards the spacious, unlimited, expansive. Anyway, just to reflect on my own experience of like coming to notice when I has become more sort of personal and limited, and when it hasn't.
Yeah, definitely. Our emotional compass will affect what we mean by the word. And that's kind of what I mean by balancing act.
Yeah.
It's a balancing act to stay poised.
Yeah.
And which, may also be poised, passive and receptive to grace, perhaps. But just poised.
Yeah.
I'm a lot more cognizant, I think, of the word I. I used to say I am like all the time. I am tired. I am sick. Or, it was just something that was common, and I didn't have the awareness or understanding of. But he really drills the point home on
Yeah.
the blasphemy part of it, like felt like a big old cuss word or something. So I was like struck by that when I read it. So I catch myself. I journal almost every day, and I'm very cognizant with this pen of I feel. if I have to state something and such, it's that I feel, or I try to reword it. It's almost like I want to savor and save this I am for its intended purpose.
Yeah.
My function is to be in consciousness. So it's sort of like an exalted term. Oh, the angels are singing. And so to throw in the I am, not feeling well, or I am hungry or something like that is like, I don't know. Now it feels kind of like I want to savor this I am term for what it's really meant for, which is the state of the being, the height of your being. So yeah, he really gave me some things to think about in regard to being mindful of how I use the word I, and especially I am. When I was cleaning out one of my closets when I moved to Asheville from Dallas last year, and I was going full steam ahead with purging, I found this like little poster I'd made at some teacher workshop, and I literally had written on it, I am a teacher, I am a all these roles and identities that I had in the world, because that's who I thought I was. And I went, oh my God, I haven't seen this thing in so many years. Look at that. And there was a brief moment where I felt this sadness for this unconscious state I was in, and writing those things, because that's, I believe that I thought that's all I was. I'm a neighbor, I'm a friend. I wrote all this stuff. I am. And I filled in the blank with all these roles.
Yeah.
I'm a daughter, I'm a wife. It's like, those are the asides on this planet, this earth experience of Earth School.
Yeah.
All I am is I am, period.
Yeah. Yeah, and we don't always know it. We have to start somewhere, like, oh,
Yeah.
we do take on these roles and find a sense of self-worth there. And then we realize, oh, they're not actually filling me, like, I think that's like such a common experience, like a midlife crisis or whatever. Like, oh my God, I've done all the things and nothing is working. What is wrong? And then like we have to have this realization of like, oh yeah, nothing. It's like it comes back to that t-shirt that I like to joke about. Great news, nothing's gonna make you happy. Nothing is ever gonna make you happy. And how is that good news? Oh my gosh, it's such good news if you really get it.
Yeah. Like I tell everybody, I found God when I left the church, but there's always drilling home this point of like, find the peace. And I'm like, but I'm not finding it here. I'm not finding it there. Like, what is it?
Yeah.
And then being, I got hit over the head with a velvet hammer. I was like, time to wake up, bing. And then you understand. I understand that I am brings a really deep, calming, tranquil peace upon me. It's like it just washes over me like it's just beautiful. I think it brings home my divinity, that this is the only role. I am only awareness. Yeah. Ooh.
Wow, are y'all into reading the next section?
Yeah, where did we leave off? Because I lost the page. What page number
So
are we
if
on?
you pick up for us, Caroline, you're on
Okay.
110.
Oh,
This
110.
I.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. This I, our essential, irreducible self, is universal, unlimited, and impersonal, and is thus referred to as God. The mixture of God's infinite self-aware being and the qualities of experience produces the illusion of a temporary, finite individual self or ego. But the self of the apparently individual self is God's self, the only self there is. The I in each of us is God's presence, the only presence there is. The personal self is not one kind of self, and God's infinite being another kind of self. The personal self is simply God's infinite being mixed with the limitations of experience. There are not two selves, one higher, the other lower, one personal, one impersonal. There is one self, if we can call it that, one infinite self-aware being, freely assuming the form of each of our minds, thereby seeming to limit itself and become separate, but never in fact ceasing to be itself alone. The personal self or ego is simply a self-assumed and imaginary limitation of the true and only self of infinite being. Just as there is no distance from King Lear to John Smith, so there is no distance from the self that we seem to be to the self we essentially are. Therefore, there is no room for a practice, a practitioner, a path, or an effort. Any effort would be an apparent movement away from ourself, towards something other than ourself. We cannot go to ourself by discipline or effort. We go there by love and surrender. The pathway from ourself to ourself is ourself. In the words of the Sufi mystic Balani, he sent himself from himself through himself to himself. There is no means or intermediary other than him. There is no difference between the sender, that which is sent, and the one to whom it is sent.
Okay, let's discuss that.
Now,
Something
you know,
I'm
go ahead.
good.
No, go ahead.
Something I'm really interested in is that piece about any effort would be an apparent movement away from ourselves, and just the effortlessness and how paradoxical that seems to be, because the effortlessness, like becoming effortless, does in some ways require an effort, because it requires a ceasing of the efforting, and ceasing the efforting. Oh, I see your little kitty back there. Ceasing the efforting seems to require effort. And like, what is that? I'm curious if either of you have a thought about that. Like, how is it that there seems to be effort in order to cease effort?
I see it a little like practicing a scale before you can play a piece. Before something becomes effortless.
Yeah.
And if
Like,
effortlessness is flow, that's one word for it.
well, I think it requires practice and learning to be effortless. The effort is in learning to be effortless. At least that was my situation. It didn't just show up effortlessly.
Mm.
I had to train this mind to be quiet, to be still, and to listen for higher self and for God's wisdom. And it took a lot of training. I went from a very, very busy mind to like sitting on this cushion and
Right.
trying everything I could in the book to just be quiet for 5 minutes in this head to stop this chatter. So there was an effort involved in, I don't think too many people wake up to this effortless presence, without some practice. So yeah, kind of like the practicing the instrument, to be good at silencing the chatter and to just be quiet.
Yeah.
I mean, it was months and months of daily work for me to sit there on this meditation cushion I bought.
Yeah.
Be aware of my thoughts. That was the first thing, was Oh, I'm thinking about, it was always usually food, meals, food, planning. I got something to do, my task list. Now I'm thinking about that again, so it took a lot of, but the comment that struck me, or the saying that struck me, was talking about the personal self is not one kind of self and God's infinite being another kind of self. And I know I reference A Course in Miracles because I'm a student, and in Course in Miracles, we call that the split mind. There is no unification in God when you have these split minds. So it's learning how to integrate and to, like he said, he wrote, the personal self is simply God's infinite being mixed with a limitation of experience.
Yeah.
But the ego and the divine aspect of ourselves, they run on two parallel tracks. They don't ever intersect. Like, you have to learn to work with them, but eventually I want to put my ego out of work and just use it for survival, or basic instinct things that I need to navigate the earth plane. But a split mind in A Course in Miracles is, they term it insanity.
Yeah.
And Eckhart totally refers to this as the insane mind. I just think, oh my gosh, how can he make a statement like that? But I understand what they mean. It's not sane to have a split mind and to live like that. So I think that's what he was referring to or speaking to.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if we believe we are something other than what we truly are, that is a little insane, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, and how disconnected we become from grace through that, how we can misinterpret so many different scenarios and situations, like take things personally when no one meant any harm, or, like feel unsafe when we're perfectly safe. I think there's so many conditions where we're not in reality, we're in our perception of reality, and we don't realize it. We don't find ourselves living in the world that we're actually living in, or like, and that's insanity, that's
Yeah.
like, if you see someone like, crazy on the street, you're like, well, it's because they're not awake to the world around them. And that's the case of so many of us every day, because we're not in the world, like we're thinking we're unsafe when we're perfectly fine. Like, here I am standing in the kitchen, but I'm envisioning I'm going to run out of money and it's not going to be okay. And, it's like, or whatever, like there's so many situations where we're not in reality. It's totally insane. Yeah. I also think that the effortless, just to come back to that piece again for a moment, like I kind of think of it sometimes like we have so many habits that distract us from our true nature and from ourselves. And the effort is in unwinding those habits. But like the true nature is always there. We just need to stop distracting ourselves from it with the play of mind. So it's like the true nature is effortless, but ceasing the habits, that seems to take some work.
I'm learning for sure. I like a metaphor. I like the metaphor of the tightrope walker. We can ask, does it take effort to walk a tightrope? I mean, I'll pose the question, does it take effort to walk a tightrope? It's not rhetorical.
I believe so, but I'm speaking from an ego perspective, so I think there's a catch here. It looks very difficult to master, it's not an easy thing to do. So to me, it looks like it takes a great deal of mental and physical capability or whatever to master that. Like, but it looks full of effort to me. It's my opinion.
While they're doing it?
the effort of concentration and being still. Yeah, I know where you're going with this in a way, but I don't know. I guess to me, from what little I know of tightrope walking, acrobatics and such, it's a heck of a lot of focus, laser focus, concentration, mental, emotional, physical strength. So I don't know. You asked me the question, my answer is yes. But I guess it's in the eye of the perceiver.
To me, it seems like somebody who has learned to stay in contact with a rope with via the least amount of effort. That's what keeps them on the rope. As soon as they try, things go wonky.
Right.
There's still effort in that.
Which is not to say that it takes no effort to learn. I mean, of course, it's an incredible thing. But the act of walking the tightrope itself, I think, is a mastery of a kind of effortlessness. In some sense.
It's a nice image.
Yeah. I'm thinking of that in like an interesting metaphor, like meditation. Meditation is kind of like a spiritual tightrope, I suppose.
Yeah.
The balance of quieting the mind and going within the silent place. But yet it does require practice and diligence. I imagine if you walk a tightrope, you've got to work on that like every day. Same is true for spiritual practice. I don't feel too good when I haven't meditated every day. You know, it's part of my daily hygiene routine, I suppose. But I do like the metaphor, and I thank you for bringing that forward.
I think when you say it requires laser focus, that is another big part as well. Because effortless laser focus is like ever-present attention.
Yeah.
But not focusing on all the ways you could fall, or it could go wrong, or what to do when. Maybe I'm taking the metaphor too far.
Well, on a different note, he says there is one self, if we can call it that, one infinite self-aware being. And I find it so interesting that a couple days before I read that, my lesson in A Course in Miracles was the one I shared with BJ. I am one self united with my creator, lesson number 95. And that is, to me, pointing to the sameness of what Rupert Spira is pointing out, that there is only one self. That is why it's important to recognize the split mind is insanity. There is one self united with the creator. And I really enjoyed that lesson. It was the same week that I read this. I thought how beautiful, because it's the same referring or pointing to, in my opinion. Whenever I'm in the body, I'm limited, I'm finite, I'm mortal. That is the one self united with my creator. I'm infinite and I am expansive, and all of those good things.
I think it's time to read our last section. You up for it, William?
Well, acknowledge I am or the feeling of being myself is a hint or trace of God's presence. It gives the mind the direction in which to go if it wants to know its own essence and reality. It is the direct path to peace and happiness. All we need to do is to stay with the sense of being myself, or take the thought I am and allow it to lead us to its source. Lead us to its source, our being, God's being, before it is qualified or conditioned by experience. To abide in the I am is the highest meditation. It is the essence of the way of knowledge, the investigation into the nature of the self. It takes the mind directly to its essence. It is also the most sacred prayer. It is the essence of the way of love or devotion. It takes us directly to God's presence in the heart. It is the prayer for which all other prayers are preparation. In resting in our own being, the paths of knowledge and devotion are united.
So beautifully written and beautifully read. Thank you.
Yeah, sure.
I love that statement. It is the prayer for which all other prayers are a preparation. It's so fascinating because it's also like, I'm just diving into discussion. It's like has said, it's ordinary, which it is, because it's like all other prayers are based on that, right? It's sort of like the seed of everything. Everything's based on this ultimate concept of I am, the great I am. And yet we have to like work our way there because we're so based in identity, in this 3D illusion. We're so based in identity. So we have to work our way to this most ordinary, like in that way, prayer. It's fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
We have to work our way to the ever present because we're so often in the transitory, in the fleeting, in the ever changing.
There's so many shiny red objects out there,
Right?
distract us and bring us out of our sense of I am, because there's just look here, look there.
Yeah. The world is a
uh,
buffet.
Yeah.
Try this.
I know. It's like going to a mall. There's all these smells and sights, and overwhelmed. But I like the word prayer myself. And I remember early in my journey here, I eschewed the word prayer because it just smacked to me of religion. I was like, oh, I don't like that word. And so I've now come to this place that prayer, affirmative prayer, is helpful. And it's a sacred word. It doesn't have to belong to it doesn't belong to anything. It belongs to whoever, wants to use it, but it's not a co-opted word from religion necessarily. I affirm, like I've done a lot of study into Neville Goddard and talking about, the wish fulfilled and living in the I am presence. He's a great teacher on this topic too. But sort of like the law of attraction, being in this presence of I am that wish fulfilled. So anyway, he would talk about affirmative prayer. It's declaring to the universe, to God, to source, I am that. I am healthy. And so prayer started taking on a different terminology. And when I think about the I am presence, it is a beautiful serenity prayer. Pointing to this beautiful union with God. And it's very sacred, very holy. Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah. I find it to be very sacred too. And I love that. Like I love connecting with the meaning of prayer, because I think it's it's a sacred expression of the heart's desire. And I think so much of what we often do in the world isn't a sacred expression of the heart's desire. Like it's the heart's desire minimized, because it's the heart's desire limited. When we're thinking this is I, then we have to attend to this one's safety and comfort, and like there's so much like the heart's desire becomes these little condensed, confined things. And then I think the heart's desire itself becomes minimized. We don't know how to connect to what we're truly longing for. And so we start to minimize, like we'll stop wanting things. I think on the sacred path, on the spiritual path, it's like, we minimize desire. And I think that's partly through misunderstanding, a lot of spiritual teachings. Desire can become a dirty word or something. But I think that's ultimately what prayer is. It's sacred expression of the heart's desire is one of the ways that I think of it. And like that's so beautiful. It's like if we look at what Ross said, that express your love of the Creator. I think it's a similar thing. We each have our own unique expression of our love of the Creator. Mm-hmm. And that's our work to be done in the world. So I'm with you. It's like it's so beautiful and sacred to live in prayer. It's so beautiful to long for and yearn for peace, for the whole human collective, or whatever it is that is our heart's desire. Like that's so good.
Yeah.
So good.
It is. It is. Yeah. I can see prayer also being like, your word is bond. My word is bond. When I speak out into the universe, what I say has meaning. And granted, embodiment and action and all of that are very powerful, but my word is powerful.
Yeah.
When I affirm that which I am, it takes it to another level than keeping it in your head. It's saying to this beautiful creator of ours, I am that, I am that I am. And that is a sense of prayer right there. It's the affirmation of who I am. What is my true nature? My natural essence is God. I remember a lady once saying, we're all godlets. That's what she called it. Like expressing ourselves as God, where she said, I like to look at every person, their divinity as godlets, as a godlet. I said, yeah, I like that too. Yeah. So anyway, it's been a powerful chapter.
Yeah. Any final thoughts or comments from you, William? I am.
I know. I hadn't heard about that. I am.
I've had quite a few, but I've been a little reticent because I've become quite aware of a different experience in relation to religion as you, Caroline, and I understand what a profound experience that must be to go through. So I just kind of hold back in case I say something invalidating.
You're good. You're good.
But I have a little thought experiment. This is not what we're supposed to be doing, thoughts. But if part of what we're exploring here is like the renunciation of being something, does that mean that God is renouncing being everything?
I don't personally think that we're renouncing anything. I think he actually said it really well in this chapter from my perspective.
Ceasing to be identified with, choose your terminology. I'm using renounce to try and be careful to avoid what you're about to tell me.
So he says, allow yourself to be colored by experience temporarily, but do not become limited by it. So I think that, it's really just that our suffering comes when we believe a limitation. And so all limitations are fun to try on. That's part of, I think, why we're here. And I don't think that requires any renouncing at all. It's just simply not believing it to be what we essentially are.
I'm trying to play around with an antithesis here. And try and see it from God's perspective. So, which is also ours. But never mind.
Maybe I misunderstood you.
It's more like it was like a little find the corresponding impatience to the patience type thing. So what we're doing right now, what is the antithesis of that? So we're finding our way back to source by disidentifying ourselves with experience, which means that there's an inverse impulse, intention for God to forget that he's everything. We're trying to forget we're something. He's trying to forget that he's everything. And of course, those two things are the same. But I thought it'd be a catchier thought experiment than it turned out to be.
Yeah. I mean, I think the parallel gesture is just identifying, limiting ourselves through identity.
Antithetical, not parallel.
Yeah. Well,
and by the way, William, there's no offense from me on whatever you say about religion or anything else. Just that's very sweet of you, but no concern about that. It's all good. My dad was a staunch atheist, and so I got both sides. Yeah.
Then I'll weigh in as somebody who had to learn to figure out what prayer is for myself from a different angle. So I wasn't brought up being told how to pray, what prayer was, and indoctrinated. But I spend a lifetime watching American TV and seeing the pitfalls of doctrine and religion, and it sort of didn't really make sense to me. So praying seemed a little bit silly to me until I obviously became more aware of what it was for myself. But I tend to think of prayer as almost synonymous with meditation and attention itself. Like when we're in a state of prayer. See, because I'm not sure. Maybe I'll bring it up in the chat because I'm not sure this will make any sense without without the person I'm talking to understanding what it's like to not be brought up with God and to have to find your way to it instead of walking away from the wrong definition of it.
Yeah, I'm really interested to hear more of that experience. I do want to close our call for now, just to honor our time. But yeah, I've heard you refer to it a couple times, and you haven't really gone into what your experience is like. So I definitely welcome hearing more about that, whether in the chat or next week or some other time.
Okay. I'll think about how to phrase it. But sorry to wind up. I'll just full stop there.
Love y'all.
Thanks for the session, guys. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you too. I love studying this.
Have a great day, William.
Yeah, have a lovely evening. Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.